morning everyone, and welcome to the Watermark Search webinar, Tips for Navigating Through COVID-19 as an Interim Executive. For those who've not met me before, I'm Caroline McAuliffe, a partner in the Watermark Interim Executive practice here at Watermark. And this morning I'm joined by my colleagues who you may well have met or spoken to recently, Lisa McAuliffe, Suzanne Mulverhill and Alicia Wilson from our Sydney office. And we're also joined by Jacinta and Donna from our Melbourne office. We ordinarily hold lunch events regularly for our Interim Executive Network, but unfortunately due to the COVID crisis, like everyone else, we're learning to work remotely and we can deliver our events via webinar. So thank you for joining us this morning. This is one of a series of webinars we'll be running for our network, and today's event theme is very in the moment and of the moment on a topic that we've been discussing with our network over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Today we'll be delivering this webinar with a long-standing collaborator of ours, Jo Attard Watters. She's Principal of People Edge Coaching and Consulting, with whom we've enjoyed many years of collaboration in bringing valuable insights to our network of interim executives. Before handing over to Jo, a quick update on Watermark Interim and the team here. We continue to work with our clients, delivering interim executives remotely. In other words, all systems are go here. We've been working from home successfully, and we've been having our clients and ourselves embrace this technology that now allows us to work differently. We continue to support our clients in delivering critical requirements, and we're reaching out to our interim network like yourselves to offer support and advice during this critical time. From our conversations, we understand that there are a number of questions relating to how best to navigate the current landscape. And we're holding this webinar to explore those questions a bit further and try and provide as much advice as possible in this regard. We will be holding live polling questions throughout in order to understand more fully people's situations and how they are coping and their understanding of not only the immediate situation, but also what the future looks like. You'll be invited to another webinar actually later on that topic, the future of work post-COVID. So please do look out for that. There are a couple of infographics that we've come across recently that might be valuable to share. The first one there sums up visually, what to expect future-wise in terms of the areas organisations are now pre-planning for as we phase back to the new normal. And to add to that, areas such as executive remuneration and of course, is open plan officing a thing of the past? So that's a really good visual that summarises those areas of expertise and how you might play a part in that planning going forward. The second infographic talks about a mindset. I think we'd all be forgiven that we all ended up in the fear zone when this thing hit, and then we've steadily worked through to learning zone, and then if we end up in the growth zone, that's a really good place to be and to show up and be in that positive mindset. Just going to move my computer. Sorry about that. This webinar is being recorded, so there's no need to make notes. We'll provide you with the materials. None of your personal details or content will be visible. We should be running for about 30-40 minutes, and there'll be time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So please do have a question if you'd like us to try and answer that, and we'll endeavour to get to as many as possible. And we'll circulate the answers after the recording. We look forward to continuing to support you at this time, and please don't hesitate to reach out to your contact at Watermark when you need some advice, support, or a sense check on what's happening out there. We're here to help you right now. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Jo. Thank you, Jo.
Thanks, Caroline, and welcome everybody. It's lovely to be here, sitting, talking to you from the nice warmth of my home. It's a little bit chillier today than it's been for a few days, so it's nice not to have to go up. There are some benefits to COVID-19, and I think really today I'd like to talk through what, some of the things that you might be feeling, but also some of the areas that really we should look at as being positives to take out of this as well. So as Caroline mentioned, I'll probably be talking for about half an hour or so, and certainly welcome your questions, and at the end we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions as they come through. I notice a number of people have also already started the chat, and if we don't get to all of the things that are asked on today's on today's webinar, we'll certainly come back to you within a few days of the webinar published. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the new world of work. What's happening at the moment? What's happening in the changing market? What have you noticed? And we'll be running 3 polls throughout the session, and we'll talk a little bit more about those when we come to them. But we really do want your interaction as part of this as well. We also want to know how you're responding to the market, but also how you should respond to the market moving forward. And then moving forward from that, we'll talk about where things will go in the future a little. It's great to hear that Caroline's going to be running another webinar in a few weeks specifically around that. So that's fantastic. In my practice, so I've worked in the area of strategic HR for far too many years to disclose, but about 2012 I jumped out of corporate life, where I'd worked in large global corporates, and started my practice in coaching and consulting. And I work with individuals and businesses in helping them through change, maximising their potential as a result of that change, helping organisations with their structures and change management. And of late, or probably the last 5 years or so, I've increasingly worked with executives in their area of managing their careers, and particularly with the ongoing work around, or the ongoing trend toward interim executives. More and more of my senior people are working in that space. So there's a real need there to move through that. So we are living in a new world. I don't think we'll ever go back to what it was before. And I think the words that we're hearing, unprecedented pandemic, self-isolation, physical, social distancing, health, economic, all of those words, the majority of them, we actually hadn't heard in the same context working together ever, because we indeed are in an unprecedented time. And who would have thought 4 months ago that we would be where we are today? We were living in the world of bushfires then. And our worlds have changed, I think, forever as a result. So obviously that's going to impact. Can we just go back to the last slide, please, Suzanne? Thank you. The way that these are affecting us are really going to be very individual, and the way that all of these issues affect us will also affect the way that we deal with others, and that we also manage our own self during this time. We're all rethinking things. I think there are a lot of people who are thinking about, do I need all the stuff that I needed before? Have I got enough loo paper? I think that one thankfully has dissipated somewhat. But really, I think we've all pared back a fair bit. We're recognising we don't need a whole lot of the stuff. We don't need to be working for the more, the faster, the better all the time. I think it's really given us that pause to really take stock and look at where we're at. I personally am hoping that actually does pursue, or does continue beyond this, because I think it's healthier for us all. But I think really it's also fundamentally changed the way that we really look at how we deal with people and how we deal with our clients or our employers, or our, as contractors and interim executives, our client organisations. We can now, I think working from home was something that you did sometimes. I think there's going to be a whole new world around that. I think the commercial property market in the cities is going to be somewhat affected by that. But I think fundamentally the way business is done is something that we'll be looking at very differently from here on in. So we might move on now to the first poll, and really I want to hear how what you've seen in the market, and I'd really appreciate just 30 seconds or so if you'd like to poll all or one of those things that you see in the market and what changes you've seen in that market. And the results are in. So 79% of you saw that projects are delaying starting. A lot of businesses and organisations and individuals, I would imagine, are focusing on staying afloat. Is important, is a strong competitor there, or contender there. Increased cost consciousness. I think everybody, organisations are really looking at that in a very strong way. And I think that goes to the, how are we actually going to continue our business model, or how are we going to change our business model to really take advantage of any cost reductions that we can take, and business models will change as a result of that. So interestingly enough, increased fear, 32% of you polled that. I think that would have been interesting if we had have done that a few weeks ago. I think it would have been a very different result there. I think we've actually come to terms with the fact that things are different, and it's actually not all bad. So that's great. So thanks for your participation in that. It's great to get people's interactions there. So I think really what we're seeing is that organisations are really preoccupied and focusing on staying afloat and retaining jobs. And we've been very fortunate here in that the government has very quickly pulled together a whole lot of strategies to assist businesses and also assist individuals who are severely impacted. I think the fear and the anxiety around things changing is sort of still there, but not to the same extent. The security of employment, which we've seen as falling away a lot over the last 15 years or so anyway, has really come to the fore. And I think more and more people are recognising that they need to take control and really have a plan B or other things in the pipeline, which is obviously helping the interim market. Interim placement is far more likely at the moment than permanent search. Although having said that, I have had 3 clients in the last 4 weeks who have been fortunate in gaining senior roles. So it's not all bad out there. So I think it's about remaining flexible, available, and making sure that you're ready moving forward for opportunities as they come about. So things have changed, and fairly quickly, very quickly, in fact. Business models continue to change, and I don't think we've seen the end of that. I think this is really, I think business continuity plans are going to really be something that, you know, organisations sort of did, but they sort of sat on a shelf. I think they're going to be very, very much part of what we have as a foundational function now. Remote working is the new way. I think everybody's got a great home office set up now, and we all want to take advantage of that. Certainly giving me 3 hours a day extra in my day because I'm not travelling, so that's fantastic. And innovation and creativity, it's really given me so much joy to see how individuals and organisations have really been able to pivot very quickly and work with others collaboratively to innovate, and creative solutions coming around in all sorts of ways. And I think a new language, as I mentioned before, you know, self-isolation, pandemic, you know, these languages, these words in our language are now here to stay. But I think we're also seeing an evolution of language even in the last month, how these words are used. So, just be very much aware of the way that you use language, because it does impact the way that you interact with others as well. So our second poll, what are you doing differently? And this is, we're all doing things differently. And again, understanding how the current situation is affecting organisations and how that may impact on each organisation. Is that something that you're looking at differently now? Recognising how you can add even more value than you did before, providing additional support, courage and leadership. Reaching out more to others to check in, people that you perhaps wouldn't have in the past, being more flexible with rates and the way that you work, and even being even more proactive about managing your career. So just take 30 seconds or so to have a look at those. And again, you can tick any one or more of those that apply. Great. A lot of people reaching out to others to check in. 72% of you said that you were doing that more, which is, I think we're seeing that in society generally, but it's good to see that it's happening. Equal behind that at 62%, understanding how the current situation is affecting organisations and recognising that it may impact on each organisation differently, and also recognising how you can add even more value, providing additional support, courage and leadership. I think it's really important to be able to, you know, really look within ourselves and see what it is that we can do for others and for the organisations for whom we're working, so that we can really show our, show what we're made of, and also, you know, provide them with the assistance that they wouldn't necessarily expect of us. Being more flexible with rates and the way you work, that's at 52%. I think that's a given now. I see all sorts of people offering different things as part of their either remuneration or their offerings, and being more proactive about managing career. And I think that flexibility is something that we're going to see more and more of. So thank you again for that. That's great insight. I think the thing that we also would really point to here is that whereas interim support used to be used as either an overflow or as a stopgap, more and more organisations are using it as a flexible piece, and almost like a long-term. You can obviously be in an interim role for as long or short a time as needed, but more and more on a long-term basis, to allow for other things to come of that relationship as well. So I think the proactivity requirements, though, of what we're about is becoming more and more the norm. So self-reliance, I think, is something, managing your own networking, making sure you're out there in front of people, I think is really, really important. Making sure that you remain flexible, that you are being reasonable. You really do market scans and understand what the market is about. That way you can flex your own abilities and your own approach to things around that. Increase your level of engagement. And I mentioned before about networking. It's really important. It's very, very easy when we're not getting out there every day to be in our own space and not engage. It's more important now than ever to make sure you do, you up the engagement. I've been doing coffee Zooms with people, but even before that, just reaching out via an email just to keep in the loop with people is really important. Picking up the phone, something we've done forever, but we haven't really done much of late, is also something you can do. Be a problem solver. Work out what people need and really meet that need. You'll become their go-to. And again, coming back to proactivity and being that self-sufficient person, managing your own stuff. Thanks, Suzanne. So responding to change. So when we are looking, obviously, I see this change as being the first of many that we're going to come up to, and it will change as restrictions become more relaxed, and we've already started to see greater activity in society, but also as the markets pick up as well. It's really important to manage the way that you respond and to be positive in that response. So staying close to the people that you work with, staying close to your networks, your leaders, your colleagues, and those others that sort of fit within your network but might be on the periphery. Connect and reconnect. Be proactive in offering that assistance. So really think ahead. Think, if that's happening, then what else might they need, and how can I offer that? That makes you that go-to. Be flexible with your expectations. So people have a lot on their plates at the moment, and you only know a quarter of it probably. So just recognize that. I think it's really important to recognize that you may not be number one on their list of people to get back to that day. So it might take a few days to come back to you if you have an initial point of conversation. But just recognise that people do have a lot of balls in the air at the moment. Find innovative ways to do stuff. So I think we've all had to pivot certain things in our practices, in the way that we do things. Continue that. We've shown an innovation that I never thought that I'd see in so many areas, and we have a great opportunity to pick that up and push that even further. Recognise that things are different, and they're not different for now, they're different forever. So continue that. Continue those thoughts, and also and fundamentally be aware of your own reactions to things. I think we're often quite isolated on a day-to-day basis, where, you know, we might be connected by technology. We might be connected with people, you know, in our work, but we're actually not having the water cooler chats that we normally do. We're not sort of passing someone's desk and saying, oh, you know, what's going on. And so that can actually create a whole lot of bubble stuff for us. So it's really it's a really interesting time to reflect on what your reactions to situations are. There are a lot of things out there that can also help you with that, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think being aware is certainly first and foremost in that area. And now we're up to the third of our polls, and again, I'd invite you to tick one or more of those. So what have you noticed about yourself? So have you got more energy, or do you have less energy? You're more easily distracted, reaching out more to colleagues. You've become a Zoom guru. I think most of us have. Engaging in activities you wouldn't normally engage in. So doing things for others often, or for yourself, that you wouldn't normally do, or no change at all. Great. So 67% of you are engaging in activities you wouldn't normally engage in. That's interesting. So there are a lot of people there doing things that they wouldn't normally do. 5%, no change. That's interesting. Changing environments and no change. So 34% have more energy, 13% have less energy, 31% more easily distracted, and 49% reaching out more to colleagues. So, and of course, 40% of us have become Zoom gurus. So I think it was telling, I think it was on Tuesday morning, I had 3 meetings. The first was on Skype. The second was on Microsoft Teams, and the third one was on Zoom. So it was interesting. I had 3 lots of technology all going back to back. For someone who wasn't all that up on video conferencing for a while, I now consider myself a bit of a guru. So that's interesting. But again, it comes back to that flexibility and the engaging in activities you wouldn't normally engage in. And that's something that I think we're all going to be seeing as we go. Actually, I'm just looking at the chat, and somebody has asked which VC technology worked the best for you. I've got to say Zoom, but I think it might be because I know Zoom best now, but I find that the easiest. That's just me. I'm not advocating their use over the others. So that's an interesting poll, and it's great to see that that so many people are using it as an opportunity to do things that they wouldn't necessarily do. So if we move on to the next slide. And how do we actually make sure that we do manage ourselves in this time of change? And I think that in itself is something that we need to do proactively. So we can either, it's like anything, you can either sort of just go with the flow, and you may find yourself languishing before you can do something about it, or you can be proactive about things and manage it. I think we've all recognised that having a workspace and some structure in our day really does help with our productivity. And it's interesting on the productivity stand. I think there was a lot of fear around a lack of productivity occurring as a result of everybody doing their own thing and working from home. I think we've all been pleasantly surprised to see how much work is being done and how much is able to be done in such a situation. And in fact, I think that's going to go a long way to redesigning organisations in the future and the way work is done. But it really is important to have a workspace. So I think, you know, we've seen all of those interesting videos of people being on Zoom calls or other calls and having things going on in the background that, you know, that may not have been great for their professional reputation, some may say. But it's also more than that. It's actually a place to focus. And I think if we've got somewhere we can focus, we're actually going to be more productive, and we're actually going to also be able to put a differential between our work and our out of work space. So I have an office. At the end of my day, I close my door on my office, and unless something major happens, I don't go back in there. My husband, who is a naval officer, was working from home on Tuesday. I was working here. He was in his office upstairs. I was in my office downstairs. We met for lunch. So it was, you can actually have that structure and that space if you need it. Structuring and managing your day, having a start and finishing time. I think we all do better with structure, even if we don't think we like structure. We actually do better with structure generally. So making sure that you have a start and finishing time, and you know, put some time in there as you would in the office. You know, put some time in there for other activities and for you know, go for a walk at lunchtime or do things that you can do when you're in the office, when you're at home, that you couldn't do. But having some structure will make sure that that time doesn't impinge on everything else you've got to get done in your work day. Be proactive in connecting with others rather than ducking down to the cafe for a coffee chat. Have a Zoom chat with a coffee, and that can be, I think, as effective. So that's something. Learn to be comfortable with ambiguity. And I think that's been a big thing for us all, understanding what that ambiguity is to a point, if you can. That doesn't really make sense, but really understanding that there is ambiguity and just sort of being able to deal with those things that you can. Ensure that your family time and your work time are not blurred. It's a really easy trap to fall into. Ensure you have a career plan, ensure it's on track. Making that comes back to that proactivity. It really is important to make sure that you do have that plan B. Things are changing, they're changing fast. We don't know in what direction they're going to change from one month to the next. And so it's important to have those plans in place and be proactive about managing them. Have some fun with it, you know. I mean, we've all had opportunities here to also do some things that we wouldn't have done before, and you know, there's some great learnings out of all of that. So I think you'll find that all of those things will help you in flourishing through this time. Getting back to basics, though, it's about taking care of you. So you can't possibly be effective if you're not well and you're not doing well in yourself. You know, some of the things, again, you know, keeping connected with people is a really important thing. Engaging in something you love to do every day, and it could be something that you've always wanted to do, but you've never had the time to try it. I've heard people do everything. I think we've all heard of the puzzles and the jigsaws and all of those things, but you know, there are other things. There's a whole lot of activities that people are doing. Just getting out and doing things that you wouldn't necessarily get to do because you're in the office. You've actually got some time to do that, so that's important. Exercising daily, obviously, we're being told to do that, do 30 minutes every day as a minimum physically, and I think that's important, but it's also important to mentally exercise. And there's a whole lot of, you know, programs that have been offered on platforms such as Coursera and the various university sites. TAFE are offering free programs as well. My husband and I are doing a resilience workshop at the moment through the University of Pennsylvania and their positive psychology unit, and it's really an interesting thing to do. He happens to be in a caring profession and a helping profession as well, so it makes sense for us both to do that, and it's actually a really nice thing to do together. But there are lots of different things that you can do to give yourself that mental break, but actually keep learning. Don't get caught up in too much in the bad news. I think that's the thing. We're hearing so much bad news. We're hearing more good news than bad, but there is still, you know, that fear factor involved as well. And get ready for the future. So we don't know what that future is. I think that's the thing, the great unknown. If only we had a crystal ball, but it will be different from what it is today. So just think about what it is that you want. Think about what it is that where you want to be, ideally. Look at online programs. Do some reading that you wouldn't have necessarily done before. Really become a thought leader. Start looking at your LinkedIn and other opportunities to publish. Set up a blog or a video blog, a vlog. Promote yourself that way. Make sure that you continue networking, and make sure your networking is really quite strategic, as well as catching up with people that you like to do. So, you know, it is important to use all of those in looking at, you know, where you want to be for the future. There will be different roles that come out of this. There will be a totally, I think the whole world of work has been upended as a result of this in so many ways, but in a positive way. And you know, by virtue of the fact that you're senior interim executives, you do have that capacity to take advantage and take advantage of your multiple skill sets and really look at how you can use those in a bit of a different way, and transfer those things around. Plan what's next. Give yourself an annual performance review. It's something that often as interims we don't get. But you know, really look at what it is that how you've done in the last year against what you wanted to do in the last year, and be quite critical about that. Review your career plan, your resume and your bio and your LinkedIn. Make sure it is, you know, really top notch, ready to launch again once this changes. Develop a networking strategy that's really quite specific and also strategic. So make sure that you're networking in the areas where you're using networking really as a research tool, looking at how you can actually implement that in a more proactive way, not just for job search, but really greater research generally. Review your development needs and do something about it. So implement a development plan, and that will help you as well. So next steps, review where you're at. Have a think about what it is that you're doing and how you want to do it. Schedule your day and your week. Include connection time in that, networking time in that. look for opportunities to innovate and to pivot around what it is that you are doing, and how you can do it a little differently, a little more, and offer help in areas that you can. Think of what's next for you and develop a plan to get there. So just in closing, I'd like you just to take a moment and write down one thing that you'll do differently as a result of today's webinar. We've talked about a whole lot of stuff. We've talked about, you know, how the market's changed and what you need to know about the market, and how you can actually influence your own career around that. How you can offer assistance to others, how you can change your way of working, you know, what it is that you might need to do for yourself, doing a performance review on yourself, putting a development plan together. There's a whole lot of things. So just take a moment and write one thing that you'll do differently. And if you want help in putting a career plan or any aspect of your career management strategy together, then I'm happy to have a chat with you. I'm happy to have an initial complimentary chat, and see where you might like to have some help, and just to think about making sure that everything's up to date. So a bit of a health check on your career management pieces, your resume, your bio, and really a strategy to meet what it is that you want to achieve. And in closing, opportunities to find deeper powers within ourselves come when life seems most challenging. And I think that is something that really hit me when I read it, and is very relevant, I think, to today. So that's in closing, and I'll hand back over to Caroline now, and you'll be able to contact me using those details should you wish to.
Jo,
thank you very much
for that. That's some great advice, great tips. The one thing I've written down that I'm going to take away from this is make sure that your laptop has enough charge in it before starting the webinar. Now we're going to field a couple of questions that have come through, and as I said before, if we don't get to all of them, we apologise, but we will make note of them and come back to you all with some response post this webinar, but we're conscious of the time. However, there's a couple that have come through, Jo, that we might just have a think about right now. One of them is, I work at home with my partner, and at times we find it hard to disconnect from work after a busy day. Do you have any recommendations on how we might be able to do this and help each other, please?
Yeah, there's a couple of things you can do there. I think it's, as I said before, I think it's firstly really important to have your own space, your own workspace, and if you can, I know it's not always possible, but try and physically disconnect from that. I think that's really important. The other thing is, you know, perhaps at the end of your day, you ask each other, you know, how was your day? What did you achieve? And then maybe go for a walk together and not talk about work. So you've actually got that physical distancing from it. And then when you come back, you know, it's social time.
Thanks, Jo. There's another one here. Do you have any tips? And I think you mentioned this somewhat already, but any tips on separating family and work when you can't shut yourself away from the children, please?
Yeah, I think again it comes back to having that spot. I saw on Facebook the other day a very interesting piece, and it was obviously a mother who'd put a sign up on her door. She was on a meeting, and it had a whole lot of questions and corresponding answers to those questions, and at the bottom it said, "I'll see you in an hour." So I think that if you have some sort of signal, I think that's important. Talking to your children if you can, and it's not always possible when they're little toddlers, but you know, at some stage, I think, you know, there's the whole homeschooling, there's a whole working from home, there's everything sort of happening at the moment. It comes back, I think, again to having that schedule and having people organised, the kids organised with some activities or whatever as well might be a way around that.
Right. Okay, everyone, I think we'll make a wrap there. Thank you for participating. Thank you for, I've been watching the interaction on the chat. It's fantastic. Love that interaction because I think that's where we'll get the most value when we're all interacting together on these things. So it's very valuable. Yes, as I said, look out for a number of these webinars that will be coming through from Watermark. Hope you've enjoyed it, and if you can take one thing away from it, that's been a valuable 40 minutes. Look forward to staying in touch with you all. All the best for now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.